Hiya! Long time no see! Whisper here! I'm back! I've been stuck in the depths of hell, which is progression rating, Mythic Plus, all that stuff. A lot of the games that I play got updates. So I've been a little bit MIA, but I'm back now. And I want to share, there's going to be a couple of videos at once, but I want to share some stuff that I've been seeing in coaching sessions, some common errors, some common mistakes. So I'm going to be releasing a series of videos. This is the first one about cooldown sequencing in single target especially. So I want to talk about specifically the cooldown sequence, only the cooldown sequence, opener, what you do after the opener, when your Kingsbane comes back up, all that stuff. Let's get right into it. Okay, this is a single target build. You can copy it all you want. It's on Wowhead. You can look that up. Okay, so what are we looking for? We are looking for big Kingsbane damage. That is through Night Stalker. We are looking for empowering our bleeds. That's a big plus. And generally just getting out a bunch of Envenoms. That's kind of the concept of the whole thing. So what's the glue that gets it all together? Deathmark duplicates your poisons. Duplicating poisons means more Kingsbane buffs, right? So as you apply more poisons, Kingsbane gets stronger. This is up to a cap of 99 poisons. So especially during Lust and during PI, if you're getting PI, Kingsbane will cap out pretty quick. Without PI, it's a little bit more difficult, but still possible. So we want to try and get Kingsbane stacked up because it'll do big damage. And then we try to buff the last ticks of the Kingsbane in some ways. So I'm going to break down the opener into 3 sections, and we'll go from there. So the 3 sections would be the prep, and there's an advanced thing that I'm going to talk about at the end regarding the prep. Then there's the actual cooldowns, and then there's the tail, which is what you do at the end of the Kingsbane, right? So the prep, what do you want to do in the prep? The prep is before you press Deathmark, before you press Kingsbane, before you press anything, you want to get up all of your maintenance buffs. So that'd be Garrote, Rupture, Slice and Dice, and then you want to go into your Deathmark with an Envenom. Because of Night Stalker, the way that will look typically is you're going to get your bleeds up by going Garrote, Ambush, Rupture. That'll apply Night Stalker to both of your bleeds and give you a full combo point Rupture. Good to go. From there, you can then Mutilate once or Ambush if you have a proc. Slice and Dice at any combo points because, again, Cut to the Chase will extend this naturally. So it doesn't matter how many combo points you use on Slice and Dice. And then before every Deathmark, you want to build to 5 combo points at least, and Envenom. At this point, you would have Garrote, Rupture, Slice and Dice, and a 5 combo point Envenom. That is when you would go into your cooldowns. So that's the prep. Why 5 combo points? It's because of our cooldown sequence. You need the 5-second Envenom to last you until the next Envenom, which is important because of poison applications. Remember that Envenom increases the poison application chance. So you want a 5 combo point Envenom to last you until the next Envenom. Then there's the actual cooldown sequence, right? So the sequence that you'll see every single minute or every 2 minutes with Deathmark is Envenom, Deathmark if you have it, but if you don't, you skip it. Shadow Dance plus Kingsbane in that order. Sorry, start again. Envenom, Deathmark if you have it, then Shiv, Shadow Dance Kingsbane together, Garrote, and Envenom. That combo happens every minute, every single time, without fail. Envenom, Shiv, Shadow Dance Kingsbane, Garrote, Envenom. That's a sequence that you can remember, you can memorize, you can get into your fingers. Cast sequence it for all I care. If you make a cast sequence macro that does that and you land it every single time, you're good to go. Normally I hate cast sequence macros. In this case, go for it. It is such an ingrained sequence in our cooldown rotation that you can macro it for all I care. You're good to go. You have my blessing. So I'm going to do the prep, and then I'm going to go into the cooldowns with that sequence. And we'll talk about Branch. I have Branch macroed into Deathmark. For Ashes, if you're using Ashes instead of Branch, you can macro it into Kingsbane, and that's perfectly fine. So keep that in mind. I'll talk about Branch afterwards. So, again, Garrote, Ambush, Rupture, get those up. Any combo points for Slice and Dice, and then a 5 combo points in Venom, so I'm going to mutilate once in here. And then Deathmark, Shiv, Shadowdance Kingsbane, Garrote, in Venom, and then we're going into it in Venom, just Ambush, Ambush, and Venom. We're going to refresh the Shiv, and this is sort of going into the tail end, right? So we'll deal with that next. But you'll see that as I go into my cooldowns, in Venom, Deathmark, Shiv, Shadowdance Kingsbane, Garrote, and Venom. Every single time. Every 2 minutes, that is the sequence. Every single time. Cannot stress it enough. You always do that sequence. Get it in your brain. Alright, so as you saw, the high combo point in Venom, the 6 combo point in Venom that I had in that case, lasted me until the next in Venom, so that's good to go. A 5 combo point in Venom should not overlap, but it'll get you there, so you're just doing it for uptime, right? You're just doing it for poison applications. You want to ramp your Kingsbane. So, now let's talk about the tail end. The tail end is your final ticks of Envenom. Sorry, of Kingsbane. Too many things going on at once. Your final ticks of Kingsbane, the ones that ramped. So, what do you want to do in the tail end of your Kingsbane? First off, you have Thistletea. This gives you Mastery, as you can see in the other side, the bottom over there. 13.6% Mastery. That does not have a diminishing return. The only thing that diminishing returns is flat values, such as your Witherbark branch, right? This is flat Mastery. But this 13.6% is always 13.6%. So for the last 6 seconds of Kingsbane, you want to Thistletea. Because of how Crimson Tempest ticks, it ticks every 2 seconds, not hasted. So ideally you do it a little bit after the last 6 seconds to make sure that you get the final tick when Kingsbane expires. So like 5.5, 5 seconds, perfectly fine. But ideally, it would also cover Deathmark, so doing it a little bit after 6 seconds, so like 5.5 remaining is perfectly fine. You don't want to do it early, though. If you do it at like 6.1, 6.2 seconds remaining on Kingsbane, you will miss the last tick, so that's a bad thing. You don't want to do that, so it's better to be a little bit later than a little bit earlier. A little bit earlier, you miss a tick. A little bit later, perfectly fine. You just lose like maybe a tick of Deathmark, you know, whatever. Doesn't matter, right? Perfectly fine. So send it a little bit later rather than a little bit earlier. Then we are also playing with Master Assassin. So the last 3 seconds, we're going to Vanish to get the crit chance on the final 2 ticks of Kingsbane. So remember, Kingsbane tick every 2 seconds. So that means that at like T-0, right when it expires, that's the final tick. And T-2, that's 2 seconds before Kingsbane expires, is the tick beforehand. So same rule applies as with Thistletea. You want to be later with it rather than earlier. If you're too early, you're going to miss the last tick. If you're too late, you're going to just simply lose a couple seconds, or like a fraction of a second of crit during Deathmark, and that's fine. So 2.5 seconds would be okay with this, but you do not want to cast it earlier than 3 seconds remaining, or else you will lose the last tick. Same rule applies. So rather be a little bit early, or rather be a little bit late than a little bit early, okay? Obviously, we also have Shiv with improved Shiv, nature damage done. This is huge. You want to make sure that you save both charges of Shiv for Kingsbane every single time. They overlap, it's 8 seconds, Kingsbane is 14. So 8 and 8 is 16, Kingsbane's 14. You should have no problems overlapping your Kingsbane the entire time. Whenever the first one runs out, just apply the second one. Good to go. So, putting that all together then, the order of operations, or kind of the sequence, I guess, will be once your first Shiv runs out, that'll be the first thing that happens. Your first Shiv will run out, then you will Shiv the second time to cover the end of Kingsbane. Then your T will be next, because that's the next longest. You'll do that at around 5.5 seconds, and then you will Vanish for the last 3. That's the tail end. So putting it all together, Garrote, Ambush, Rupture. Now you're getting your Slice up with any combo points, 5 combo point in Venom. And then you're going Deathmark, Shiv, Shadowdance, Kingsbane, Garrote, Envenom. You're spamming Envenom here. Shiv is coming up, so you're gonna Shiv. Last 5 seconds, you're gonna T. And then the last 3, you're going to Vanish. Now, what do you do during the Vanish? During the Vanish, you always want to use 3 GCDs. The order depends on what combo points you Vanish at, but it's always going to be these same 3 GCDs. It's always going to be a combination of Ambush, Garrote, and Envenom. So let's say you Vanish right now with 3 combo points. You would Garrote, Envenom, Ambush, right? Garrote would get you to 6 combo points, you'd Envenom, and then you'd Ambush. If you have 0 combo points and you Vanish, you would Garrote, Ambush, Envenom, because that would, again, get you to 6. Garrote and Ambush together get you to 6, and then you'd Envenom at 6. If it's any combination other than that, if you, for example, Vanish at 5 combo points or 6 combo points, you would Envenom first to dump those combo points, and then Garrote, Ambush. It's the same skills. You're using the same skills every single time. It's just a different order depending on what combo points you're on. And that depends on Seal Fate crits, so nothing you can do about that. It's just, you have to react. Some more advanced stuff now that we got that down. First thing, do you want to save T for the end of Kingsbane? Yes, every single time. You always have 1 T charge for the end of Kingsbane every single minute. So T is a 1-minute cooldown, Kingsbane's a 1-minute cooldown. That means you have 2 charges of Thistle Tea to use throughout the fight. That is not during your cooldowns. You do not want to double Thistle Tea during your cooldowns. The start of Deathmark does no damage. Your Kingsbane hasn't ramped, don't use T for it. So the other 2 charges of T you're just using for energy. If you're interested in that, the other video that I'm releasing, one of the other videos I'm releasing is going to be about cooling. So that's what happens after your cooldowns, between your cooldowns. You're going to be using Thistle Tea then. But this is just about cooldowns. So always, always, always 1 charge of Thistle Tea for the end of your Kingsbane, if you're trying to min-max that. The next thing is what you do without Deathmark. Without Deathmark, it's the same combination, right? The same combination I talked about. So you want to Envenom beforehand, then you want to Shadowdance, Shiv, Shadowdance, Kingsbane, Garrote, Envenom. Same sequence, you're just cutting out the Deathmark, you're cutting out the Vanish. So I'm just gonna do an opener again, this time without Deathmark, right? Same thing applies, so I'm gonna build, get to Envenom, and then Shiv, Shadowdance, Kingsbane, Garrote, Envenom, same thing, right? Once the first Shiv drops, I'm gonna cast Shiv again. Then the last 5-ish seconds, I'm gonna T, make sure it overhangs, right? And we're good to go, right? Same sequence, same sequence. Okay, next thing, what about Branch? Branch sucks, I hate using Branch. Here's a really simple tip. Branch will always spawn 3 orbs in the same spots. 1 here, and 1 behind you, right? So if you run, just hold WD and then A, right? So you strafe top right and then left, and then you wait. It'll hit you every single time. So we want Witherbark Branch to overhang the end of Deathmark. Deathmark being 16 seconds. It'll also be the end of your Kingsbane. So we can use the cooldown as like a sort of timer, right? You want the last orb to hit you at around 54, 53, because that way the buff will finish at the same time as your Deathmark. So when the cooldown on Witherbark says 144, that's 16 seconds in. That means that the buff should be finishing like a second after. And we can actually test that. So we can click Witherbark, WA or WD, then hold A, then wait. And you'll see this orb slowly comes in, and it hits me 152, so this buff will last until 142. And again, 16 seconds means 144 here, so now it would finish, and I still have the buff, and it times out perfectly fine. I don't track my orbs in mid-combat anymore. Whenever I press Deathmark, it's basically second nature for me to do this movement. You just kind of run in a figure 7. So WD, A. You can also run the other way. So if it's more comfortable for you, you can hold AW and then D, right? Whichever you want to do. That's how I do it. But as long as you collect 2 orbs and let the 3rd one hit you, you're good to go. All right, very easy trick to do that, and you don't even need to watch your orbs anymore because you just muscle memory that movement. In some fights, it will be a little bit rough, but most of the time it's okay. Other min-maxes. Rupture during Dance and Envenom. This is very tricky to pull off. There's some conditions that need to be met. I'm not going to bother teaching you how to do that because in simulations itself, it's about 75 to 100 DPS, or 0.05% DPS if the conditions are met and you do it perfectly. If you're getting an augmentation buff during your cooldowns at all, it's not going to be worth it anymore because you want to help the augmentation evoker out and use their buff, so you'd envenom anyways. So the first condition is you're not getting aug buffed, which is already gonna eliminate basically like 60% of the population right off the bat. So in general, it's not worth it. You can do it, but Rupture in general, I would use just the same way as a normal Rupture. You wouldn't really plan around Night Stalker, you wouldn't try to snapshot it. You would just go ahead and play it like a normal Rupture. If it's in Pandemic and you need to refresh it, go for it. If it's gonna fall off, refresh it, go for it. You don't have to play around it in any sort of way. My weak aura tracks it, but really, you don't need to. If you refresh it a couple seconds early, it's perfectly fine as well. That about covers it for single target. For AoE, I'll have another video out for that. But that's about it. That's all I have. The final thing I want to say is never use a double on use. Yes, my trinket's kind of bad, but so for example, like Branch and Ashes, you might see that combination pop up as a really, really good simming combination on Blood Mallet, for example. Blood Mallet is accurate, so it will say Branch #1, Ashes #2. That's true, but not together, right? Only one at once. You don't want to have two on use because they will cooldown each other. There's a shared cooldown on trinket uses, so you can't double buff during your cooldowns. And since you're already using Branch during your cooldowns, the other on use is going to really suck because it's not buffing a really, really high burst. Anyways, let me know if there's questions about that. That should be everything. Trying to think if I missed something. Night Stalker, that. Oh, yes, macros. So I use two macros. The first one is just Deathmark Potions Trinket. This is for Witherbark Branch. If you're using Ashes, you would macro it into Kingsbane, and that would be okay. And then I have a PI, right? You want to get PI with Deathmark. So Trinket, Potion, PI in Deathmark. Cool. The second one, which might help, is, where is it? This one, Kingsbane. So it's Shadow Dance first. It always has to be first. You want to Kingsbane inside of Shadow Dance in order to get Night Stalker. But it's a very simple macro. Other than that, it's just simply cast the two abilities. Shadow Dance first, then Kingsbane. Something you might notice is if you try to cast the macro mid-GCD, Shadow Dance is off the GCD, Kingsbane is on the GCD. So you might have to spam the button a little bit. For example, if I just go like this, and then I press the button, you'll see Shadow Dance went off, Kingsbane didn't. That's because Kingsbane is on the GCD, and I cast it while my GCD was on cooldown. So keep track of that. Spam the button if you have to, make sure your Kingsbane goes off. And that actually now, for real this time, is the last thing that I have. Anyways, I hope it helped. Bye, see you in the other videos. Have a good one.